Hi, so something a little different today. I recently recorded a chat with Louise Fletcher for her ArtTribe online art community. So she kindly sent me a recording of the talk that we'd had so I could put it on here. So that's coming up next. If you're interested in any of my workshops, online mentoring or books, then those can all be found on my website, which is at this link here. And lastly, I'm often asked about the kinds of materials I'm using. So I recorded an FAQ video, and that can be found at this link that's just popping up here. So having said all that, over to Louise.
So I am thrilled and delighted to welcome Louise to ArtTribe. So welcome, Louise. Lovely to have you.
Hello, thank you. No, it's great. No, this is really nice. I've not done this before. Bit of a collab. They call it a collab, don't they? Kids.
These days we need to have collaboration more than ever, I think, online.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we've got none.
Yeah. I think, that connection with the observed landscape is the key, really, the core of what I do. Yeah, it all starts with observation, and it goes from there because it's got to have a foundation. It has to have a foundation in something. It doesn't even necessarily, I think, have to be something that you've seen. But it could be, you have to be there. It's like you go for a walk and you can soak in atmosphere, and be something. You can't just pluck this stuff out of the air. It doesn't work. I think you can do it, and you can try and do work which is completely abstract and call it landscape or whatever. But I think the resonance with the real landscape comes across if you've been there and seen it first. I think there's a sort of that connection with the experience of being in the landscape. And I think that's really all my landscape paintings are about that. And I always say this, that they're about the experience of being out in the landscape. They're not necessarily about the over there or there's a cow. They're about what the landscape does to me as a person when I'm out in it. And that's what the paintings are about, really.
Lisa asked, and this is following on from what you've just said, she said, I'm interested in his thought process. Does the landscape appear as he works, or does he have an idea of lights and darks before you start?
I often have a direction that I want to go in. It's something that I might have seen. So I do quite a lot of paintings which are sort of reflections in rivers and things like that. I've done quite a lot of that. So I know that I want to do one of those paintings, but I don't like to impose the finished painting onto it before I start. So I don't sketch it out onto if I'm doing one of these big canvases behind me, I don't sketch it out onto the canvas and then try and plan everything before I do it. I do let the composition sort of develop. Yeah. So the way I work is that I would go outside and I would do a load of sketching, and then I'd bring that back to the studio. So that's the start, is going out and looking at something. And I bring those back to the studio and I play around with all my sketches and tear them up and collage them like people have seen doing on my YouTube channel. And then I'll take that group of sketches and then maybe do 2 or 3 large paintings based on them. So it's always a series of work. There's a series of sketches, there's a series of collages in the sketchbook, and there's a series of paintings. So it's all got a sort of general direction that it's going in, but I don't really want to know when I start what it's going to look like, because I always want to surprise myself. And I feel that there's a sort of excitement for me that, if I don't really know what's going to happen, then it's interesting for me. If I knew exactly what the paintings were going to look like at the end, I don't think I could be bothered to do them. Because they're done, they're done. I know what it's going to look like. What's the point?
So how do you know, I got us a bit off track, but going back to what you were saying about building up the painting and you don't have an idea, although you have a concept. So then how do you know when it's finished? Somebody asked. That was another question.
I do get asked that quite a lot. How do you know when it's finished? Well, I know it's a bit annoying, but you kind of just do. You kind of just when I think when you look at I think sometimes I have to put the paintings to the side for a while. That can be useful. That's why I have lots of them on the go. I don't work on one painting, finish it, and then move on to another one. I tend to have several on the go. But the one that's started that group of paintings isn't necessarily the one that will get finished first. It's often the one that gets finished last, actually. because you're kind of carrying ideas through from one to another. But what happens for me is I tend to, I work on them. And then if I start to get to a point where I'm fiddling around with it, just making little changes here and there, I think, well, maybe either it's finished or I need to leave it for a bit, decide whether it's finished or not. And if I still feel like fiddling, I probably need something major.
Yeah.
Like big areas of it, painting out and doing over. Because sometimes it can be a little bit, it's okay, but it's not quite satisfyingly done, and I think it's a lot of the time it's a feeling. You look at them and if they feel right, there's nothing glaringly obvious that you want to change, then it's probably finished. The painting.
Julie is asking, can Lewis do a slowed down version of his decision making around how he uses torn papers to build up a new piece of work? You make it look effortless, but when I've attempted to play like this, it's very hard to create a cohesive finished piece. And Claire also asked about this. She was asking, how do you blend in the torn pieces so well? I do exactly as he does, but it always stands out and not in a good way.
Well, you have to tear the paper in a particular way. So it's like a lot of the paper that I use, if you tear it in one direction, you get a line that you get this kind of torn line that you can see. And if you tear it the other way, it isn't there. So I always think the bit that I want to stick down is the bit that's coming towards me.
Oh, right.
So I think I think it's to do with the manufacture of the paper, and I presume it's universal to if I want to say there's a piece of here and I want to stick the bit down, I always pull that bit towards me, because then I don't get that little line. I think a lot of times the cohesiveness comes from not having those distinct edges between the bits of collage. Because if you look at a collage piece and you can see like all these little joins where all these little torn edges are, it kind of blocks the flow. And I always think it's about the images, the way they come together. It's all about having your eye being led around the image.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to find things which will bring the eye maybe out, but it will bring them back round again. So there's these kind of rhythm that kind of draws your eye back to the center, because a lot of the time, if you don't crop it quite tight enough, or there's distracting things on the edges, it draws your eyes away to the edges. So I'm always trying to find things that will draw your eye back to the center. I think it comes down to practice as well. I know, it's a hard thing to say, is that the way I'm doing those sketches and the collages, it's something that has happened. I didn't sort of go out and design that way of working. It just kind of, I fell into doing it. It became something that I did. And that may just be a personal thing. And it's partly to do with the way that my brain works, possibly. But I'm sure if you just keep practicing at it, I think that's all. I think I've just done so much of it, because I'm doing them over and over and over, just do so many of them that eventually you can just sort of see it. But it's not magic. None of it's magic. None of it's some sort of genius that can't be replicated. It's just practice. I'd never say that someone else couldn't do it.
Yes.
Because I'm not that good.
They can't do it like you. They can do it like them. Like they might.
They don't want to do it like me. You don't want to do it like me. Take the process.
Yeah.
Use the process, but don't try and do it like me, because then, why would you want to do it like somebody else? I don't want to paint like someone else.
Yeah.
I don't want to paint like someone else. And why would someone else want to paint like me? I can understand they want to learn certain things which will help them develop their own work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, it's needs to be more personal than that. And I think it's part of the problem is that, trying to make it look like something else.
Wendy tries to make sketches loose. She said it didn't happen until she discovered you, so thank you very much. But she nearly always ends up being closer to realism than the more abstracted images that you create. And she said, do you have any tips for getting away from automatically painting something real? And Sonia asked your best exercise or tip for encouraging loose, dynamic type painting. So they're both kind of asking the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I often wonder what it means, loosening up. I can never really pin it down. It's quite you kind of know what you mean, don't you, when you say loosening up? But At the same time, it's quite a difficult thing to define. But I certainly know what they mean about not doing a picture, and how to avoid that. And I think that's why I've started doing the collage. It's all about separating out the processes. So what I like to do is I go out and I'll paint from life, but then I'll bring that stuff back to the studio and I'll rip it all up and muck about with it. And that's where it gets loosened up, because it's really difficult, I think, to not fall into that trap of seeing a picture. And I always say it's about, you turn up somewhere and say it could be anywhere. Say it's up a hill or something, you're looking out over Derbyshire, like I do a lot, and it's very difficult not to imagine that view as a painting, like a finished painting. And whether it's oil painting or a watercolor, whatever, you've got this kind of preconception of what it should look like when it's finished. And so your sketch is or your painting is already kind of doomed, because you're not trying to look, you're not looking at what's in front of you. What you're doing is you're trying to finish a painting that you've already finished in your head.
Right.
You've finished it. It's in the back of your head, and you're trying to get the thing on your paper to look like the thing that's in your head. But you're not looking at the landscape. You're thinking, I'm trying to make a painting. And so it's kind of got it all back to front. It's like you finished it before you've even started. So what I do is I try and not worry about any of that. Forget about making pictures while I'm outside, because I've done loads of that. I've done loads of direct painting outside, trying to do things from start to finish. And whether, some of them have been, pretty good. I'm quite happy with them. But I find this way of working much better, because it means I can separate out the process of looking and being outside and having the experience of being in the landscape, separate that process from the one of actually creating the pieces of work that are going to be seen. So the sketches that I do tend to be much more obvious in a way. You can see there's a bit of sky up here and some land down here, and if you're looking at them, but once they're finished, they don't look like that, because I've separated the doing bit with the thinking bit.
Yeah. Maureen and Carmen were really interested in your thoughts on sky. Maureen said you did a video where you talked about the sky being all around us, as opposed to the concept of the sky meeting the horizon. I can sort of sense what he means, but I don't know how to go about painting this feeling. So she wants to know how you incorporate that idea into your paintings.
Yeah, I always joke with the family that I need to get some T-shirts that say "Paint the Wind," paint the wind, and I can sell them at my workshops. But yeah, kind of, because I think when you have to, like I come down what I was saying right at the beginning, you've got to be outside. You can't not be outside. You have to experience it. So if you're sitting outside doing some painting, well, for me, what I'm trying to do is actually try and paint the experience of being outside, not just what things look like, because what things look like isn't what's really happening. It's like, look, go back to this way. If you're sitting up a hill and you're looking across to a hill on the other side, and there is an obvious horizon, but that's, I think what she's referring to is like the sky doesn't start at that line between that hill and the sky. That's not where the sky starts. And I always say that the sky starts at your feet, because it does. The sky goes all the way down to your feet. So it's all the way. So if you could just use your imagination and actually think about what's really happening and not just what it looks like. So you can get a sense of the fact that there's a huge amount of air between you and that distant object, whether it's a hill or the horizon and the sea or something. But there's this massive amount of air, and you kind of just picture it and imagine it and the things moving through it. And on a practical level, I do things like, if the wind is blowing, so I was saying about paint the wind. If the wind is blowing across, then you can make a line. You can draw that movement, feel a sense of, if it's moving like this, then make a line about it. And there's no, or if a bird flies through the sky or something, you can just sort of imagine that it's your pencil's following the trajectory of something that's moving in the sky, or a leaf blowing past you or something. So it's that idea of really getting a sense of what's actually happening, because there's this whole, I was saying before about how you kind of imagine the landscape as a finished thing. So you're not really experiencing it. It's not just about one sense. It's not just what it looks like. You've got 5 senses. There's no reason why that can't all go into your painting. In fact, there's one time I remember that kind of really was, kind of solidified the idea in my mind. And I was doing some painting outside, and I was near a quarry. And when you have the quarries around here, they have a siren, like an air raid siren goes off before they do the blasting. So there's this siren going off, and I'm out in the landscape and I can hear this siren. And I thought, that's great. What can I do? How can I make a mark on my paper to represent the noise of that siren? So I got this big orange pencil, and I just kind of made this big jaggedy orange mark on my paper, and that was the sound of the sirens.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason why you can't try and associate things you feel, the wind, the sounds, whether it's hot or cold, whether you're uncomfortable or happy, sad, whatever. There's no reason why you can't try and find a way of making a mark on your paper which is about those things. It doesn't just have to be about what it looks like.
And when we look at it, and that's why your work feels so alive when you look at it, it's got that atmosphere, it's got that energy, it's got, even though I might not know what that line was representing.
It doesn't matter.
I can feel it.
So it's about getting that sense of movement, finding things that get the sense of movement into the work, sense of energy into the work.
Brilliant, thank you. And Carmen, that answers your question, because Carmen was talking about sky. She's working on a project about sky, and she wanted to know how to abstract it or how to keep it fresh. So
if you get stuck and you've got there's this sky bit at the top and there's a land bit at the bottom and there's this kind of gap in between that doesn't quite make sense, turn the whole thing upside down and just start working on the top, make that the sky, and make the bottom bit I always turn them around. So I work on a lot of square shapes, because the way you turn it around, it's always the same shape. So you can put it on its side or turn it around. It's a really good way of just pushing, changing the way that you see your work, because you get into this kind of psychological mindset with that's the top, that's the bottom, and your brain can't get away from it. So just these simple things like turning them upside down makes a big difference.
Yeah, and then I turn it upside down and go, oh, bummer, no good this way up. Have to start again. All the time, because you, like you say, you've got used to looking at it that way. Or especially if I turn it just slightly one way around, not all the way around, then no, that doesn't work at all. Got to do.
It does. It's like looking at a portrait. You put a portrait in a mirror and you can immediately see what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
Can't you? So if you turn them upside down or on the side, you can see you stop looking at it for how, what you thought you were doing, and you actually see what's actually there, and you can see where the balance is off.
Yeah. Perfect. Now we have a couple of questions from ceramicists about your ceramics.
I don't know anything about ceramics.
You must do.
Well, I do a bit, but they probably know more than I do.
Well, Maureen says she's just received your Edge of the Earth book, and she was going through the pages, and she pulled out a particular photograph of a stoneware vessel, and she said it's this is what she said: it's positively incredible, like relics from a past age with a patina reminiscent of years of wear and erosion. She's crafted wood to look like stone and bronze, but how exactly are you creating these works? She said, please ask him to reveal his practice, because I'm knocked out with it.
It's like I said, I don't know anything about. I think it's probably why that some of them work is because I don't know what I'm doing, which is why I wanted to start. Which is why I was doing ceramics, and I want to try and get some more done. But I've got this studio that's got plenty of room, and I've got a kiln, but the two things haven't matched up yet. I haven't got the kiln in the studio connected to any electricity. So I was doing it, and I was working with a really great ceramicist called Mark Smith. He's really good. He works locally, and he was teaching me. We did like a skill swap. He was coming on my courses, and I was getting some teaching from him. But so my knowledge of ceramics is quite limited. But the way I was doing those is it's stoneware forms with porcelain slips, and that's it. Right. That is all. It's layering up porcelain slip which is why so all the white, the lighter things on there is porcelain, and then it's got coloured stains in the porcelain. So it's kind of like painting. It is painting, layering painting. But obviously when it goes in the kiln, there's a few random things that happen. It cracks and splits, and if I put too much on, I think it separates out. So yeah, things have been happening that I wasn't in control of, which is quite nice actually. I quite enjoyed that. Do enjoy that random. It's like happy accidents. It's all happy accidents. Which is why I was doing it. I wanted to do something which I didn't know how to do, and it was quite deliberate for an exhibition, for that Edge of the Earth exhibition, which was in the Cotswolds at the Camden Gallery year before last. That I wanted to do some work, and that was different. And been wanting to do ceramics for quite a long time. And as I started doing it, the two types of work, the painting and the ceramics, kind of started to sort of, some of the marks and the colours were coming across into the paintings, and some of the stuff in the paintings was going into the ceramics, and which was nice. I want to do some more of that really.
That was Tracy's question. So Tracy is a painter and she works in ceramics, and she was asking how the two things have influenced each other, because you can see the connection between them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I use a very limited palette when I'm painting. And I was doing the same thing, using similar colours with the ceramics. So there's definitely a sort of cross-pollination between the two things. But it was quite deliberate. The thing about ceramics is what I say is this: that whenever you show somebody a pot that you've made, nobody says, "What is it?"
Yeah.
They never say.
What's it supposed to be?
They never say, what's that supposed to be? Is it a landscape? I'm not really sure. And because it's a pot. I've got one here.
Oh,
so,
look. Yeah.
All this kind of, so this is porcelain, like I said, this is porcelain slip on a stoneware pot. But all this kind of layering and building up, and then I've got a squirted spray and all sort of stuff to make it all fall off. But like, if that was one of the paintings that I do. In fact, I did some paintings which were a bit like this. People, like I say, they might look at it and go, "Oh, is it? Is it?" But no one's going to look at that and say, "Well, is it meant to be a landscape? Is it a seascape? What is it? Is that the sky?
Yeah, why is that?
Is that a tree?"
With the face.
Said, no, it's a pot. Right? And that's the great thing about it. It's like, and to take some of that mark making, the freedom that allows you, kind of get this. You can just make marks, just make texture and colors and shapes, and have that psychologically have that freedom to do it, to be completely abstract, I suppose, without any reference to any kind of external sources, and then to take that back into say, well, if it's all right, if I can do that on a pot, I can do it on a painting. So it was really useful, it's from a psychological point of view, to realize, to make those realizations that you can do the same things on a painting. It's okay. It's okay. Doesn't have to look like anything. It's okay. It's still nice.
This has been absolutely fantastic. Where can people find you if they want to look and see more of what you're up to?
Well, the main place is my website, which is lewisnoble.co.uk. I'm on Instagram, which is lewisnoble_artist, and my YouTube channel, which is Lewis Noble Artist on YouTube, Lewis Noble Artist.
Good. Well, thank you so much for this. It's been an absolute...
No, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.